It is so good to be back. It's good to be back, isn't it? I mean, we missed one Sunday, but it feels like we've been away for ages. But I'm so glad and happy to be back with you all here in Metro, talking about Mickey Mouse Church. And what I want to do, as Matt has already said, is to paint a picture of where we're going as a community. So if you're new here, if you're not used to being part of us, if you're being brought by a friend or you're here for the first time, then this will give you a good little indication about what we're going for, what we're trying to achieve. Now, I realize that when I choose the title Mickey Mouse Church, this could come back to bite me, because things could go wrong with what we're doing, and we could end up Mickey Mouse Church in all the wrong ways. Also, I know that there are some of you here, and you've made this very clear to me. You've come up with your Mickey Mouse paraphernalia and your earrings and your coats. And people have made it very clear to me that I'm not allowed to spoil or ruin Mickey Mouse for them. But what I want to do is I want to just use this as an example, a little metaphor of what we want to do as a church. We want to have vision for this year ahead. And in the past, we've used the expression about Metro being a missionary church. In other words, a church not for ourselves, but for the mission that God has put us on. We're not here doing the things that we necessarily want to do. We're doing the things that we want to reach people with. We're a missionary church, but we also aspire to being a Mickey Mouse church. And I'll explain what that means later on. But first of all, what I want to do is I want to ask you a question. It's really important that at the beginning of the year, as well as doing things like the Bible plan, we think about where we are at in our lives. We think about where we're at in our faith. And so I want to ask you this question, and I want you to ask yourself this question. The question is this: are you happy with what God is doing in your life? You don't need to answer it, but I want you to think about it yourself. Are you happy with what God is doing in your life? Are you happy with how close you feel to God? Are you happy with the way that your spiritual life is progressing right now? Are you happy with what your faith is doing? Because for some of you, you look at the last few months and you know that your Christian life, it's there, it's a part of your life, but it's not necessarily as great as it could be. Maybe it's not as great as it used to be. Maybe it's not as good as the things that you read in the Bible when you read the Bible or you see in other people's lives. Maybe you look at other people and you think they've got it all together. They are a great Christian. For me, I struggle. I have issues. You know my issues. How happy are you with what God is doing in your lives? There are some of you here tonight, and you're here tonight. You don't normally necessarily come regularly, but because it's the brand new year, you want to get into a good habit, and you're here. But you're almost on the verge of just sacking the whole thing off because it's not really that powerful in your life. And you have to ask yourself the question, are you happy with the way that your faith is going? If you don't know about God and you're trying to find out more, if you're trying to just burst that bubble, get into the whole faith thing, how is it working out for you? But here's the second question. How happy are you with what God is doing in the lives of those around you? Because you might be having a great experience as a Christian. You may be doing great with faith, but you look at those around you, the people that you love, that you care for, the people that you work with, the people you line manage, the people that you flat share with, the people that you play sports with, the people that you hang out with, the people that you grew up with. You look at your family, you look at your friends, and you see there's so many people living lives without God. And it's hard to be totally happy in your Christian life when those around you don't get it, don't understand it, sometimes actively hostile. And it's really important that we ask ourselves these questions, because if for any of you here, the answer to those questions, if you're like me, the answer is actually no, not really, not quite. Loads of great things, lots of things that I'm happy with, but actually I want more of God in my life, and I want more of God in the lives of other people. And if that is where you find yourself, if you answer that same answer, no, to those questions, or not as much as I like, then what we do and what's important for us to do is we have to connect with the big story of Jesus. Everyone say the big story of Jesus. It's so good to be back. The big story. Because when we wander away from the big story of Jesus, then things start to lose steam. They start to peter out. And that is why at the beginning of the year, we need to reconnect. What is faith all about? Are we doing what we should be doing in order to have the kind of relationship with God that he wants us to have, that we want to have, that we read about, that we aspire to. You need to connect with the big story about Jesus, because if we're not connected to the big story, if we've just somehow got a little bit of secondhand religion, it's never going to work. It's never going to affect you. And that love that we speak about, that good Father that we speak about, we're never going to know it in its profoundest sense unless we've connected with Jesus' big story. I want to look at a passage, a particular time where the whole thing for Jesus, it crystallizes in one moment. He's with his disciples. He's moving through the Galilean countryside. They go to towns and villages. Crowds of people come around him because they've heard that Jesus does miracles. He changes lives. He heals the sick. He speaks words of life, things that just make sense. People flock to him. And the Bible says that in the midst of all this success, an incredible and unexpected thing happens. Matthew records the scene. He says this: Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the good news of the kingdom and healing every disease and illness. But then he says this: when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them. Everyone say compassion. Now, some of you have heard me talk about this before, because this is literally the most important verse for me, I think, in all of Scripture. It's the verse that I see every day in my house, because I have it literally painted on the walls. I hand-inscribed it myself some years ago. I see this every day. It's very much my guiding principle. That word compassion, because I remember the first time that it hit me, the word compassion. Because you can read the Bible and you can breeze over these things, or you can hear them being talked about and you can not really register how powerful it is. But the word compassion is a very, very special word. In the Greek, the word compassion is actually splanknon. It's splanknidzomai, but the root word is splanknon. Everyone say splanknon. Again, some of you, you've heard me talk about this before, so you know that splanknon is where we get the English word spleen. Because the way that you talk about emotion, deep feeling, in first century Palestine is different to the way that we register it. We talk about the heart. We talk about, oh, my heart is full, my heart is broken. We talk about this kind of little Valentine's love heart, and that's where we put our emotion. No reason, it's just a muscle, it pumps blood. But for some reason, we establish that and we associate it with emotion. Well, in the Jewish mindset of the time that Jesus lived in, it wasn't the heart where you feel deep emotion. Because when you are frightened, you feel it in your gut. And so for the Jew, it was the gut, the splanknon, the spleen. And that word compassion, it literally means a wrenching of the spleen. So the whole tenor of Jewish thought in those days was the biggest, strongest, most powerful emotion. It's not in the heart, it's in the gut. It takes guts to do courageous things. When you're in love, you have butterflies in your stomach. Valentine's Day comes around in first century Palestine. You open yourself a card. It's got a picture of 40 foot of long intestine with an arrow through it. That's how they processed things. And that word splanknidzomai, compassion, we don't have any analog for it in the English language, but it literally means his spleen was wrenched. His guts were wrenched. It is a core emotion, a doubling down of emotion. It is intense, it is powerful, and it is never, ever used of anyone else apart from God the Father or God the Son. Listen, if you don't know Jesus, if you're not close to him, if you're one of these people that's maybe been in church in the past, a little bit burnt, you're trying to find your way slowly back in, you just need to know that God has intense feeling for you, compassion. He feels not indifference, total brokenness. Because Jesus sees the crowds. He has compassion because of this. He says, because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. He sees people as incredibly precious, sheep that he wants to care for. But he sees that sheep have not got the shepherd. And so they're being harassed. You've seen sheep being harassed by a sheepdog. In this day, they're being harassed by predators, by wolves, by people that want to just get into them, animals and forces that want to rip them up. And when God looks on this world, he sees people who are helpless in the face of forces of darkness and depression, things that are wrecking people's lives, things that are hurting people. And God is not indifferent. Jesus shows us the powerful compassion of God. When Jesus looks at Bristol, his heart is moved. His guts are wrenched. He feels compassion. Because just like the people in that day, the people in our day, the people around us, harassed. We have all these modern conveniences. We've got IKEA, we've got iPhones, we've got lattes, we've got skinny jeans, we've got all this great stuff. And yet people are still beset by anxiety, sexual brokenness, abusive pasts, hopelessness in so many cases, confusion, uncertainty, a lack of spiritual fulfillment. It's like these forces come against people. We have in Bristol around about 95,000 people in their 20s, and only 1,500 of them have any connection with church whatsoever. That means the vast majority, 98.5% of people, have no connection with Jesus. And Jesus' reaction is, I feel compassion, because they have no ability to withstand spiritual forces of darkness and doubt and fear and all these things. Now you say, I'm a Christian, I still struggle with these things. Yeah, but you have a shepherd, you have someone to turn to. When you're outside of the grace of God, living your life, trying to navigate all these different challenges and the tragedies that can hit us, the knocks, the blows. No one to help you, no one to keep the wolves at bay. And Jesus is filled with compassion because he sees the way that people are in. But then what he does is he says this thing, and it is the most unusual thing. Because instead of being all down about it, he says this incredibly positive thing. He turns to his disciples and he says, the harvest is plentiful. Everyone say plentiful. So he's talking about sheep, and then he just changes the metaphor because, I don't know, maybe he gets distracted, maybe he wants to put it in a different way. Jesus is always creative. He's always using language and pictures and stories. This just bursts out of him. He's an incredible person to be around. So he's talking about sheep, but then he starts talking about a harvest. And he says, do you know what? It's not a dire situation. Yes, there are forces that drag people down. There are things that hurt people. There are things that make them struggle and make their lives difficult. But he says, ultimately, the way that I see it, the harvest is plentiful. In other words, there is tremendous potential out there. When Jesus looked at all those people through Palestine, he saw not only lost people harassed by forces outside of their control, but he saw a tremendous potential harvest for God's kingdom. Good things, seed that God had sown in their lives that could bear a good fruit that just needed to be brought in. And when God looks at your workplace, when he looks at your colleagues, when he looks at your friends, when he looks at the people in your flat, on your course, in your street, on your family, he doesn't just see the pain and the difficulties and the confusion that they're under, but he sees tremendous potential. And some of you think that the people around you have no connection with God. You just need to know. The harvest is plentiful. I'm not here to stand up and say, oh, woe is me. The world is going to pot. Everything's going down the drain. The church is on the decline. No, I'm here to say, listen, God says, Jesus says, the harvest is plentiful. So what's the issue? Is it that God just doesn't care to get involved? Is it that he's somehow powerless against all these other forces of darkness in our society? What's the problem? If the harvest is plentiful, why isn't it being brought in? Why isn't this a good news story? He says the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. And this is the amazing thing, and this is what I want to focus in on. That when Jesus sees people, he feels tremendous core passion for people, compassion for people. And he sees tremendous potential for people. God has a vision for our city. He has a vision for what we can do, what we could see. Things that if we were told about it, we would scarcely believe. Things that if we were to look back in 20 years' time, we would just be amazed at what has happened. And he says, the fact is, the harvest is plentiful. It's just about the workers You're like, what? Come again? Isn't it you, Jesus, that has all the power? You, Jesus, that is the key to unlocking this situation? No, he says, for some reason, it's the workers, it's the disciples, it's the people, you and me. It's the one-on-ones, the ordinaries. It's the people sitting here before me today, the workers. The fact of the matter is that they are few, but if we could get more in, then we would see tremendous things. And that's why Jesus was able to say, ask the Lord of the harvest, send out more workers. And what I want to talk about is this whole thing of us being the workers. If you feel like you're not happy with your Christian life, your Christian experience, it may be that you're not keyed into what God wants you to do. And so Jesus is always telling his disciples, I believe in you. I'm behind you. You got this. You can do this. You're my plan A, and there is no plan B. You're the workers. You're the source of the solution. You're the ones that are going to make this happen. And then he goes through his ministry with them. He gets to the cross. He dies. He gives his life on the cross. On the third day, he rises again. He's in power. He's beaten death. He's beaten sin. He's beaten sickness. He's beaten the forces of darkness. He's beaten the wolves, the bears, every predator that would come against mankind. And he gathers his disciples together on the mount before he is ascended into heaven. And he says this, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and attend a really good church. Yeah. Amen? Amen? Let's hear it. Amen? Amen? Jesus says, I've beaten death, I've resurrected, I've come out of the grave, and now I want you to go to church. Find a great church, a really good church that really suits you. Church that's right up your alley, that's got the right blend of the right music with the right people, good looking enough, but not too good looking that you get intimidated, you've got no chance. I want you to really get in there because that's what I want for you. That's why I died. That's why I came to this earth. That's why I beat and burst out of death so that you could go to church, go to meetings, carry on, sing some songs, do it. If you go once a week, you get special Jesus points. No, that's not what he said. And he didn't say, therefore, go and develop a really great private spirituality. You know, I've beaten death, and I just want you to be holy people. Individually, holy. I want you to be so full of grace. I want you to be getting it together. I want you to have the big Bible, only drink milk from the Christian cow. Do all those nice Christian things. Be a nice person and eat nice biscuits. No, he doesn't say that. And he doesn't even say, therefore go and be my disciples in the nations. We get it so wrong. We get it so wrong. And that's why for many people, Christianity is like a meh kind of deal. It's like a mediocre. It's okay, and we know that it's true, and we're pretty sure that we're going to go to heaven when we die, but it's not transparently dynamic and amazing. It's not radically revolutionary. Doesn't make you want to clock your clogs. I don't even know what that means, but there's a lack of excitement. Why? Because we're not doing the things that we were meant to do. It's like Jesus set us off on a trajectory and we miss it. And we think, oh, be a good disciple, go to church, do all those things. And you say, well, Philip, if I'm not supposed to do it, are they wrong? No, of course they're not. These are all good things. And we need to be doing those things. There's a reason why they're there. They're really super important. It's not what Jesus said, not what he died for, not the mission that he gave us. He said, therefore, in fact, therefore go and make disciples. Make disciples of all nations. Some of you know that. You know it. Others of you just sort of shouted out as everyone else was shouting out. Hope to get the right nations. But that's it. Make disciples. Make disciples. That's the strategy. That's it. So you've got the big picture. The big picture is that God has a tremendous heart. He has unbelievable compassion. He's a good Father. He loves us, perfect in all his ways. He loves you. He loves those around you. He loves the world. He gave his life for the world. But he says the way that I'm going to get these sheep safe and well and thriving and happy and reflecting who they're supposed to be is not by me just unanimously, unilaterally coming down and doing it all from heaven. No, it's through you, workers. And the way that you're going to do this, you're going to make disciples. You're disciples and you're going to make disciples. You are followers and you're going to make more followers. The way that it's going to happen, it's going to be this incredible, organic, flowing revolution. A people movement. People gathering together, getting the message of Jesus, being transformed by the love of Jesus, and then going out and making others into disciples of Jesus. It's going to spread. It's going to go viral. That's the Jesus way. That's the vision that we have. This is Mickey Mouse Church. So let's get into Mickey Mouse. Okay, lean in. This is Mickey Mouse, and I'll try not to ruin Mickey for you, Laura, or Jamie. Don't hate me. But Mickey Mouse's big break came, I think it was in the 30s, when he was in his own big starring film, which was called Fantasia. Fantasia, where he basically, is part of this kind of incredible psychedelic light thing and music, and it's classical music. And he retells the story of the Sorcerer's Apprentice. So here's our Mickey. So if we get Mickey, he's got his little garb on. Everyone, round of applause for Mickey. I know you came to see Mickey, that's fine. But he's got the Sorcerer's Apprentice clothes, and he takes the hat of the sorcerer. He's been given this job by the sorcerer. The sorcerer says, I want you to fill my cauldron with water. He's got these 2 heavy buckets, and he's taking water from the pool, and he's schlepping these buckets over and pouring them into the cauldron, and he gets tired. So he puts on the magician's hat, the sorcerer's hat, and he enchants the broom. And the broom sprouts arms. It's quite horrific. And it becomes a kind of sentient creature that picks up the buckets for him and appears on the scene looking something like this. If you've never seen Fantasia, you probably think I'm talking crazy, but it's a real thing. And all the time that it happens, the music goes. Okay, you just keep that going the whole time. And what happens is that he is really happy because the broom is doing the work. The broom is doing the work. And after a while, the cauldron is full. But he doesn't know. He's only an apprentice. He hasn't finished his study. He doesn't know how to make the broom stop and go back to just being a broom. The broom's like, no, I like this, man. This is whole self-awareness. It's a trip. And so the broom's just carrying more and more water. So eventually, he just can't stop it. He tries stopping it everywhere he can. Finally, he picks up an axe. He gets the axe. He chops the brush in 2. So the broom is now dead. It's not quite as good as the original, but that you get the general idea. And every time he chops the broom in half, he cuts the broom in half, and then he cuts those halves into other halves, and those halves into other halves, and those halves into other halves, until there's just like this scattering of matchwood along the floor. He's cut that broom up. He's divided it and subdivided those pieces on and on. But the magic continues. And this is the genius. This is the magic. This is Mickey Mouse. Because every fragment of the broom that has been chopped now grows into full size and grabs its own buckets. And all these little brooms with buckets come on the scene looking like an army of brooms with buckets. And instead of destroying the thing by dividing, he actually multiplies it. And this is what Mickey Mouse Church is. It's simply Mickey Mouse Church's multiplication church. It means that everybody gets to divide and multiply what they are doing. It's Jesus saying, I don't want you just to be a good broom with some good buckets. I want you to reproduce. I want to chop you in 2 so that you make 2 people in a good way. And that's what makes it magic. That's what makes it incredible. And these guys, and there's water everywhere, and he's going to drown, and the whole place is having a kind of tsunami flood, and then the sorcerer has to come along and like, no. And it's all, but the point is this. I want us to be a church like Mickey Mouse. I want us to be a church where we don't just concentrate on, I am a broom and I carry my buckets, but how can I get someone else? How can I reproduce myself? How can we multiply what we are doing? We're not interested in making Metro mega big. We are interested in taking an axe to Metro and chopping it in two whenever we can so that we see the thing multiplying. And in God's economy, it's like magic. In the way that God works, it's like magic. Because instead of making something small, you make it twice as big as it ever used to be. And you get this incredible revolution. And 1 becomes 2, and 2 becomes 4, and 4 becomes 8, and 8 becomes 32, becomes 64, becomes 128, becomes 256, becomes 512, becomes 1024, becomes 2040. Who's just going, It's only timesing by 2. This is not difficult. But what you have, magic. How do we change this world? How do we change the city that we are a part of? We do it not by holding on to what we've got, not by consolidating and hunkering down in our bunkers. We do it by sacrificially allowing Jesus to take the axe and break us in two, to multiply our effect, so that the life of Jesus in us becomes the life of Jesus in someone else. I'm interested in seeing a church that plants other churches that plant other church. I want to see Metro soundtrack down the next 20 years being and as churches begin to multiply off. And to do that, we've got to produce leaders that produce other leaders. To do that, we've got to produce disciples that make other disciples. And that is the whole of Jesus' strategy for reaching the world. It's not to enclose people in little groups and inward-focused little warehouses of little Christians so that we can do little stuff. No, it's to send us out. He says, all authority in heaven and on earth, it's given to me. So you go, make disciples. You can do it. How do it? He says, listen, therefore go and make disciples of all nations. You do it by this, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. And surely I'm with you always to the very end of the age. You make disciples just by going. And then you baptize them. Listen, February 24th, in about 7 weeks, we're going to be baptizing a whole nother bunch of people. It's so exciting. And most of the people, we've baptized 34 people in the last 2 years. Majority of those have been brought by other friends. We had that thing just recently when we had the grandchild baptism, when we had, let me get this straight. I'm going to say it was Lucy that brought and baptized Beth, and then Beth brought and baptized Rosie. This thing carries on, little brooms multiplying. When we put them in the baptistry on the 24th, we'll have it playing, because that is the life of Jesus, multiplying out. He says, baptize them, teach them to obey. I don't know whether I should say this, but one of my big issues with people in church is that they get so focused on church. Like Jesus died, so you can go to church. And then they'll start evaluating the church. And they'll say, I want to go to a church that gives me great teaching, and maybe I'm not getting enough teaching here. I'm like, teach yourself, for goodness sake. You've got billions of podcasts out there. You don't need to come to church week after week, suckling at the teat of church to get your teaching. My job's not to teach you. My job is to teach you to obey. And FYI, your job also is to teach others to obey. It's not like you get to heaven and God's going to sit you down for a multiple choice questionnaire. How much theology did you learn? No, he's going to say, did you make disciples? And you're like, what? I don't want that for any of you. I want us to be able to say, Lord God, you had all authority, and we went out in that authority. And we trusted you, and we were part of a community that was built like this, that was modeled on this, that was totally dedicated to this. And we went and made disciples. We went to people. We went out there. We shared the good news with them, and we baptized them. And then we taught them to obey. And that is what happens when we grab a hold of the good news. And I know that I'm making it sound easy, and there's many, many challenges ahead. I tell you this is a year that's going to be tremendously challenging for many of us here in this room. But we're going to overcome these challenges because of these wolves that come against us. We have a good shepherd, a good father, and he is on our side, and he has got our back, and he will fight our battles for us. And all he asks, the one job, you have one job, the one job that you have, make disciples. Go and make disciples. Share this life. Pray for your friends. Make an invitation. Pray for them when they are sick. Serve them when they are in need. Reproduce the life of Jesus in them. And then as they come to faith, you teach them to obey all the things that Jesus has commanded you. We carry on. Like Mickey Mouse, we're multiplying here, there, and everywhere. We want to see that happen. Now, I'm going to give you the big idea, and then we're going to do something. But before we go into our sort of response time, I'm going to lay out a challenge for you. So first of all, here's the big idea. Just to wrap this up, just make sure that you've really got this. This is the big idea. Our one job is to make disciples. Everyone say, make disciples. So if anybody ever asks you, what's the point of being a Christian? What's the Christian supposed to do? You don't say, go to church, read the Bible. You say, actually, Christian's job is just to make disciples. That's it. Fair and square. The one job. And all those other things are helping us do that job. We come together for church so that we can worship Jesus, be filled with his Spirit, encourage one another, get some marching instructions, go out, make disciples. Your one job is to make disciples, reproducing what God has given us in the lives of others. And this is our mission as a church. And I say this to you. My ambition is for Metro to have a Mickey Mouse moment this year. I want us to see, and in the next 12 months, and I don't know how this is going to happen, I'm being totally honest with you. I don't know how it's going to happen, but we're working towards this, and I want you to be with us together as a community, that we have a Mickey Mouse moment, that God will give us a great big shiny axe, and we chop in two, and we see the magic happen as God multiplies what he has, and we start to take serious ground in our city for Christ. But I want to make it really practical. We're going to go and respond in a moment. But I want to give it practical. I want to give you the cocktail stick challenge. So here is a cocktail stick. And because I couldn't afford to buy a broom for every one of you, I want this to represent a broom. And I want you to take this as a little reminder. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the cocktail stick. I'm going to give you 4 ways in which you can see that thing reproduced. 4 areas in which we can make disciples for Jesus. 4 areas in which we can take what God has given us and multiply it, double it in our lives. I'm going to give you 4 areas that are going to fit with our vision, and then you're going to pick one. In fact, you can pick all 4 if you like. You can pick as many as you like, but you've got to pick at least one. You don't have to do this, of course, but all I want is that as we start 2019, we have this Mickey Mouse mission mandate to go out to make disciples, to multiply what Jesus has given us. So this is our vision as a church. We exist to help people find Jesus and love one another, then follow Jesus and serve their city. And if you are new here, if you're not used to being around, next week, before the service starts at 6 o'clock, we've got a special reception for new people where we'll go a little bit more into our vision, our values, our history, what we're about, how you can get involved. But the rest of us, we should know this. It's find, love, follow, serve. And I want you to think of each of these areas, and I want you to think about what you can ask God to multiply in you in these different areas. So this is the first one, find, and that's Alpha. So, yeah, he's got a Mickey Mouse hat on. The next Alpha course starts on Wednesday the 23rd. So you've got a flyer here, and there's flyers here at the front. I want you to think, for some of you, as you pray, I want you to think, actually, I want to take a flyer, and I want to invite my friend. One of my friends, I had invited them so many times for years until they went along to Alpha, and then they did the second Alpha immediately after the first one. Sometimes you've got to take the knockbacks. We're not responsible for what people say. We're just responsible for inviting them in the first place. So you take this and you say, yeah, this is the cocktail stick. I'm snapping the cocktail stick. You're going to keep one in your pocket, or maybe you put both of them in your pocket, or you put them in your wallet, in your purse, you put them on your desk, you put them in your phone case, and randomly, in 3 days' time, you're going to prick your finger on a lemon cocktail stick. And then you go, oh yeah, I remember. And it's going to remind you that you said, yeah, I'm going to invite my friend. I'm going to invite my friend. I'm going to pray for them. I'm going to see that life reproduce, not just stuck to me. I'm going to go and start making disciples. So for some of you, the thing you're going to choose is Alpha. The second one is hubs. That's where we help people love one another. Some of you, you need to be in a hub. And if you want to find out how to be in a hub, talk to Matt, who was leading the worship here earlier, or go to one of the guys on the welcome team, or come and find any of us as team, or go on to the website. But we will have hubs for everybody. And in each hub, we have hub leaders, but we have hub subs. And some of you, you need to step up and say, yeah, it's my time to be a sub leader, to learn the ropes, to become not the sorcerer's apprentice, but the hub leader's apprentice. Doesn't quite sound as good, but you go for it because you say, I want to just be someone taking in all the time. I'm going to become a sub. And if you'd like to explore leadership, we've got a meeting at my house on the 14th, and we've got a leadership boot camp coming up in this term. But we want to see hubs multiplying. Do you know, 3 years ago, we had 0 hubs. 2 years ago, we had 1 hub. Last September, 4 months ago, we had 8 hubs. Now we have 11. And we're going to add more as the term goes along because it's dun, 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 and we're starting to divide hubs because that's the whole point. And I know that for some of us, that's a painful thing because we like being with our friends. But you've got to understand that when we allow Jesus to do this with us, that's when the magic happens. Because the friends that we had, suddenly we've got twice as many. Suddenly we haven't lost, we've gained. A wonderful thing happens. Thirdly, mentoring. That's how we help one another follow Jesus. And some of you will know that we've just launched our Metro Mentoring app. It's an online tool that helps one another mentor each other. You can either have one-on-one mentoring or you can have a mentoring triplet. But mentoring, this is one of the most exciting things that I'm beginning to see take root in our community. People are beginning to mentor one another and then mentor others. I mentor a few of you, and everyone I say, you've got to mentor someone else in turn, because that's how we chop the broomstick in two and multiply the effects of what God is doing. So I mentor Sam Cook, and Sam Cook mentors Tom Jackson, and Tom Jackson mentors Sam Burr. And so the whole thing goes off. And who's Sam Burr going to mentor? I don't know, but we will find someone. Everyone that we baptize, just one random person, you're going to be baptized by Sam Burr. Every person that we baptize, we're now saying, right, we're going to give you a mentor so that you can grow in your faith. You can follow Jesus more, because we don't want to just warehouse you for heaven. We don't want to just sausage machine you into Christian oblivion. We want to take you up a gear so that you become like Jesus, being like him, speaking like him, praying like him, healing like him, loving like him. So if you want to be mentored, if you want to be mentoring someone else, then come and find us and talk to us, and talk to Matt as well, because I think he should just have all the jobs because he's the most efficient of all of us. And then finally, serving. The way we do this is through our social action project. We've got TLG, Transforming Lives for Good, where about, I think, 30 or 40 of us are going to go mentoring kids in a deprived area of Bristol so that they've got better life chances. And if you want to do that, you talk to Kate. There's still the opportunity to join in. But for everybody else, the other thing that we've got coming this week is love running. Everyone say, yeah, say woo. I am very excited about Love Running. How many of you did Love Running 2 years ago? Okay, that's just a sign of how many new people we have had. We do this thing. I'll tell you more about it. In fact, I won't be here next week. I'll be in Woodlands, pitching Love Running to them. We have raised £600,000 through a mass entry into the Bristol 10K. We've done it 5 times. We raised £600,000. Last year, we raised, 124? We had 520 runners. We're going to do this. And this is where it gets Mickey Mouse, everybody, because you don't just say, I'm going to run the 10K and raise money for Bristol Need and for Syrian children refugees in the Azraq refugee camp in Jordan. Matt and I went a few months ago. You don't just say, I'm going to do it because I'm a good Christian and that's what I'm about. No, you say, I'm going to Mickey Mouse the heck out of this thing. I'm going to get all my friends. I'm going to get my colleagues, my boss. I'm going to get my mistress, whatever it may be, my flatmate. No, not my mistress. She can't run to save her life. But I'm going to get... It's not true. Sorry, hon. Losing it. Did I lose it? Okay, let me bring it back. Come back. We're going to invite the people around us. We're going to say to them, you want to get fit? You want to get friends? You want to change the world? Of course you do. Let's do Love Running together. Let's train together. Let's raise money together. This will be a fun thing. Every Saturday now, pretty much of my life, I run with my neighbor. And we do that because we did it together from love running. And if you're watching this on the internet, thanks. Really appreciate. Love you, buddy. And we'll continue doing that because we got into good habits. I don't want to just do something for me. I want to have it reproduced all around me. And that's what we're going to do. We're not just going to be a bunch of pious people in red t-shirts running around Bristol. We're going to be people that Mickey Mouse our mission, that multiply what God is doing. And at the end of all things, Jesus says to his disciples, and surely I am with you always, the very end of the age. Some of you don't feel close to God right now. But when you step out into his mission, when you step out and do the thing that he has set you up to do, chosen you to do, anointed you, empowered you to do, when you do those things, you experience his presence in a way that you never do otherwise.